Good evening, everyone. This is the February 19th Town of Monroe Planning Board Workshop and regular meeting. Noreen, if you would do a roll call for attendance.
Anthony Vaccaro is absent. Lisa McQuaid? Here. Bonnie Franson?
Here.
James McKnight?
Here.
Jason Sorinsky?
Here.
Jeff Manson?
Here.
And John Allegro is absent this evening.
All right, 5 of the members being present, we have a quorum. I'd like to point out the fire exits. There is an exit in front of me to the left, the main door, an additional exit out by the kitchen, and then another exit behind my left shoulder over here in the event of an emergency. If we would all rise, please, for the Pledge of Allegiance. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The first item on the agenda is Mikvah Yisrael. However, I don't see anyone representing that application at the moment. So why don't we move on to Eagle View Estates. Good evening. How are you?
Good. How's everyone this evening?
So why don't you let us know where we are
Absolutely.
in the process?
So we've made quite a bit of progress since the last meeting. In fact, I think we're approaching the end of the process. In our last planning board meeting and technical meeting after that, there were a few things that needed to be addressed or were requested. One was a subdivision plat, which you have in front of you. That was the map that was submitted along with the application for this meeting.
Excuse me, David, pull the microphone in closer, please.
So, no problem. So that subdivision map is in front of you. It was prepared by the surveyor, showing the section, block, and lots, and the meets and bounds for each of the 3 lots. As was requested, in the final set of plans, they'll have a dual signature. Right now, it has a surveyor's signature. Subsequent to that, it'll have additionally my signature and seal. Also, we had waited for some comments from the DPW regarding the private road width and the turnaround, and we've received direction on that, so that's been approved to the best of my understanding. The road maintenance agreement is being drawn up by the applicant's attorney, so I expect to have that for our next meeting. And the sewer was another discussion that came up during the technical meeting. It's my understanding that that's been, for lack of a better word, finalized, or there's a consensus regarding it. So once I do get that consensus, we can reflect it upon the plans. So at this point, we're hoping to finalize the process, and I believe part of that would be the public hearing, getting that set so that we can schedule that for the next meeting.
So, Mark, have you had a chance to review this? I know we had
I don't
a...
have the latest set of plans, but
Okay.
everything that Dave indicated is, I believe, 100% correct. There were a number of technical issues we were working our way through. John Sherney, the highway superintendent, and I went over the private road as proposed versus the strict requirements of the new road specification. John feels comfortable granting some waivers. I don't know if a letter's come through yet, but we did discuss it, and he will have that to the board, and so that I would hope will be in the board's hands by the time the public hearing is held. The sewer was a big issue because it was quite unclear what exactly Moodna cared to have, the Moodna Basin Sewage Commission. I did have an opportunity to talk to Scott Green. It was a very good conversation because he indicated that, in fact, Moodna will be taking over the sewer. So all the problems that were in existence because of the nature of it being a private sewer went away, because now they will be reviewing the specific design. They will accept a shared force main. They will take care of maintenance operation. They, in fact, clarify that they want to have a saddle rather than a doghouse manhole for the connection out in the road. So I gave Dave some clarifications on that based on my discussion with Scott Green. So I think all the open issues, kind of the big question marks, the technical question marks are out of the way. So I would think that the board could authorize the public hearing, and I'll just work with Dave to make sure that all the technical decisions that were reached are followed through on the plans.
So for Eagle View, this was one where we were looking at a cluster, or there was going to be preservation of open space. And did we determine that the lot yield,
I'm trying to remember.
This is the one with a small lot with substandard
Oh, yeah.
off of
Yeah.
Walton.
and there was some language in the code, I think I remember that was another issue, just to justify, or did we have the actual yield?
It was a question if it was going to be a 3-lot or it would be
A
restricted to
2-lot.
only a 2-lot,
Right.
depending on how the code treats that initial lot, the substandard lot that exists off of Walton.
Right.
So that's an open issue.
Yeah, because I think this latest plan from February 13th, that's not the cluster. This is the proposed plan,
Yes.
correct? Okay. Although we still need to show open space, I believe, on this, if it is a cluster.
All the space along lakes was being reserved and not disturbed. In fact, I
Right.
believe the utilities were all coming off of Walton.
Yes.
The issue became in the conventional plan, what the yield plan would show, would it be 2 lots or 3 lots?
Right.
Does the current code allow?
Right.
Did we find that answer at the meeting, or I don't have my notes of that meeting, I don't know why. If we didn't find it out, I'll have to get back to you and look at the code language.
Yeah,
I didn't bring my computer, so I don't have those notes.
So my recollection was the existing lot that is proposed to be used for the yield. What were the dimensions of 18461?
Well, 18461 was revised to make it larger, so
That's
that
what-
the yield of
That's
that
what we
lot
discussed, yeah.
was-
He would redraw that line so that lot itself would be conforming.
And then is lot 1 then also, lot 1 and proposed lots 1 and 2, are they conforming?
Yes. Lots 1 and 2 are not an issue. They had excess area.
Okay,
So we were able to relocate, or as you can see, it's noted, proposed relocated lot line.
okay,
That was done so that pre-existing non-conforming lot now yields the square footage needed to conform with the code.
so we have, it's 5,175 square feet that's being added to existing 18-4-61?
I think the issue, looking back at my notes, is whether or not the merger provision in the town code caused that lot to be
Oh.
merged into
Right,
the adjoining lot.
But even if they all merge, say it's one lot.
right, you could still,
Divide it into 3
Right.
complying lots, he'd be okay.
But
so
the
I-
first lot didn't comply, that was the issue.
right.
But I
So then
I remember-
then they made this change.
Right.
So that we would have a lot that complies with the minimum lot requirements,
Yes.
and it meets the other bulk standards
Yes.
for like side yards and lot width and,
According to the conservation design. So right now, we were trying to satisfy the yield of the lot area.
right.
With the proposed relocated lot line, all the lots comply with the minimum lot area.
But you got to show an approvable conventional subdivision. Are you able to place a proposed house on each of those lots that would meet the other requirements?
Yes.
Okay.
But we don't have that map.
No, no, you do not have that map at the present time.
Yeah, so before we have a public hearing, the first thing we need is, we need the conventional lot yield, because the board has to then agree that your yield is 3 lots. And then once we get to 3 lots, then you can cluster it and design it, that it doesn't necessarily meet those bulk standards. But we haven't, we don't have, or I don't think we've received yet, the conventional, unless this is intended to be your conventional. I'm getting confused on what you're actually proposing at this point.
Well, this, right, there was a time that had passed. You know, that we were accumulating all the information.
Right, right.
So, during that time, at least we had wanted to get this subdivided plot plan to you to show that the lot areas do comply in
Okay.
the conventional plan. The houses that, we can provide footprints of homes on these lots within the side yard requirements or within all of the setback requirements to show that a conventional plan would comply with the zoning code.
Okay. That's what we really need. So then, once we say, okay, based on the requirements of the zoning law, your conventional subdivision layout, showing the yards, showing, the minimum lot area, where the house would be located with the, driveways, et cetera, yes, you can achieve the 3 lots. Then we can push that aside and actually look at what you want as far as a layout. I don't know if this is the layout you want. You may want to have 10-4-61 actually be the smaller lot and have 2 larger lots. I'm not sure where we are with your actual plan then,
The final design?
the cluster plan.
The cluster plan won't change.
Okay,
The cluster plan is shown,
You're
as the
still-
last presentation will remain.
okay,
Okay, so this exercise was to satisfy the portion of the zoning code that requires demonstrating these lots can be conventionally designed.
What needs to be shown is an
So-
approvable subdivision that meets all of the provisions of the code.
Correct, which we can. So,
This is
and
something
then
so,
the cluster design won't change. That plan that we had submitted back in in December will not change.
all right, so right now I have one of the plans up. This is
Go to the next one, please. After that one, I'm sorry. Actually, that's a conventional,
was this your conventional?
that's a conventional design. The difference between the one up on the screen and what you have before you is the proposed relocated lot line. Can I go up to the screen?
Yeah, and I think what the issue was with this is that,
And that would be demonstrated from here to here.
okay, what is our, I don't think I see the zoning district. What's the zoning district that we're in? I don't believe it's on this map.
SR 15.
So SR 15, this, if this is the conventional, this lot had the 9,825 square feet. So that's why we're looking for a similar layout that showed this lot meeting the 15,000. So now what you're showing is this 9,825 square foot lot. You're adding 5,175 to achieve the 15,000.
Correct.
Okay. And so if we look at the rest of the lots, or the remainder of the lot 1 now, you're saying lot 1 would have, what's the area for lot 1?
12,500.
So if it's 15,000, it's not meeting the not meeting that standard?
No, it's definitely meeting the standard because we were way above on our square footage for lots 1 and 2.
Right, that must be. So your lot on this plan says 24,084 square feet. So if you're 24,084 square feet, and if we're taking out 5,175,
Well,
that leaves me 18,909.
well, if you go to the area table on the left side of the plan,
Okay.
the plan in front of you, not the one up on the screen,
Okay,
it gives a lot, the area table of each.
okay. Sorry, I see it now.
That's okay. So 18-4-61 is the upper lot. With the relocated lot line, that will yield 15,000 square feet in compliance with the zoning code.
Okay.
With that change, lots 1 and lot 2, well, lot 1 would be 18,909 and lot 2 would be 23,700.
Okay. And then on this layout, you're showing and illustrating dwellings and where they would be located.
Correct.
And I don't see anything, and I don't know if you do, Mark, anything that if they add additional land from proposed lot 1, I don't know that it would affect any setbacks.
It would not affect the rear yard setback.
Right, that's the one that in particular.
Correct for lot number 1.
So right now, it looks like you've set a line at the 750 contour, right in here.
Approximately, yes. Yep, right at that corner.
So the house, it would be whatever the dimension is from here to here.
Correct.
What's the scale on this? On this drawing? I don't have the hard copy.
Oh, thank you. Probably 1 inches 30.
You know for sure?
Which plan are you?
This is the one with the conventional.
1 inches 30.
So if I go here. $30 feet. This is correct. I've got about 35 feet to the rear at that corner. And our dimensions for, do you have a legend on this? Is there a legend for the bulk requirements
Yes.
on that sheet?
Well, it reflects the cluster development.
Conventional plan without cluster. I think you're showing rear yards here of about 41. Let me bring up the code. SR 15?
Yes.
So we have lot width of 125, front yard of 50, side, one in total, 30 and 65. Wait a minute. Again, this is with or without central sewer? This is with central sewer?
This is with.
Yes.
Okay, so with, we're looking at lower bulk requirements. So 85 lot width, 40 for the front yard, 15 side yard, 40 total, and then the minimum rear is 40. So I think we need to see a conventional layout that shows that you're going to meet this rear yard dimension.
That's fine, we'll slide the house down. You have plenty.
You should have plenty of room, right?
Yeah, you see the front yard, the setback.
Right in here.
Yeah.
So if this is your yard from Lakes to right here, if this is your front yard setback,
Correct.
so you're saying you'll slide this back?
Correct.
Okay. So I think what would be good would be to just resubmit the conventional, showing how it meets all the dimensional requirements for conventional. And then planning board will need to determine the yield, and then we can move forward with the cluster and do a public hearing on a cluster.
Well, Since this month has passed, what, you have,
It's at the end of the road.
perhaps could we work through expediting to get to the public hearing, so we don't miss a meeting?
Mike or Mark, when could you get a plan in?
I'll make it happen.
So, well, we'll have a workshop, and then we have a regular meeting, which would be the hearing. So I guess, if we reviewed it at the workshop and everything was, in order to make the determination, then the public hearing could be held at the following regular meeting. We could schedule the public hearing
Not
conditioned
publish
on,
unless we-
yeah.
'cause we'll have to see how much time there is between the two. You do need to send it to the Orange County Planning Department.
Right.
I think you should close out secret before you schedule the hearing.
Right.
But if those two things are doable now, then you can schedule the hearing.
Two meetings.
We would have, I don't know that we can close that out tonight. The Orange County, we have to send it to them, but we could
Well, you
just
wouldn't
hold
be
the
able to
public
act.
hearing.
You could hold the
Right.
hearing,
We
you
can
just
hold a
wouldn't be
public
able to
hearing.
act, yeah.
So, but seeker, we have to take action on before we open the public hearing?
I believe for a subdivision, the way the case law has come down,
Yeah.
that you must either issue a negative declaration or have found a DEIS suitable for public comment and hold that public hearing at the same time.
Okay,
So either way, you got to close out secret.
okay. So, at this point for seeker, do we have the EAF and it's unlisted? Although it's a workshop, I guess we could do seeker at the workshop meeting.
It's still a
You know,
public meeting.
Then we could have a resolution. I'm just trying to think through procedural
No,
here.
I'm with you 100%.
So if we do the neg deck at the next meeting,
Next workshop, and then do a public
at the
hearing.
workshop meeting, then the public hearing could be held subsequently. Because we really need to have like I said, the conventional demonstrating the yield and all the setbacks. We also should have whatever the latest and greatest proposal is, showing a conservation easement on it. And then, Mark, I didn't know if you had any other additional comments on the plans.
No, I'm just looking at the subdivision plat that we have now, and it's really, it rightfully is called a lot line change and subdivision, because it is accomplishing both. One thing that I would ask that Dave do when he's packaging up the resubmittal is to use, on the conventional plan, use the surveyor's plan as your base. Because we're starting to have multiple plans for the same thing. We've got what the surveyor prepared, which is really the basis of which the filed subdivision plat will be put in front of the county. And we've got your plan, which is showing the improvements. I just want to make sure they match.
Sure.
So you need to make sure that that plan is the base underlying plan that you're going to show the improvements. As well, we have to make sure that the bulk table is complete, because we've got a bulk table on the surveyor's plan that's not complete. We've got a bulk table on your plan that at this point doesn't match because the lot line change hadn't been drafted yet. So you need to pull these all together.
No, and we agree. We, at the technical meeting, we agreed to do two bulk tables, one for the conventional design and one for the conservation easement.
And that's where I'm headed, that there should be two surveyor
Sure.
plans. One for the conventional
Yep.
and one for the cluster. The cluster as well, the surveyor is the one who has to compute the areas. That's the only person licensed to do the calcs for areas of the land as part of a subdivision. Architects or engineers really can't do it. So you need two base plans from the surveyor that has all that data, and then you can create layers on companion plans for the road, for the sewer, for the water. So just,
And we really should be seeing houses on the conservation subdivision as well.
Absolutely.
Because right now, even though we may be going to public hearing, this really isn't complete enough. Where are the houses generally going to be located, and what would be the established setbacks? I see you have some setbacks here. But this is the latest conservation, I believe, plan. So we should show a building footprint here.
Go to the next, go to the next slide. And one
This
after
was-
that.
Okay,
That's the cluster development layout for the conservation easement agreement.
okay.
So the footprint of
Sorry.
the houses is shown, the private road is shown, the land dedicated is shown. And for the most part, at our technical meeting, we all agreed that this layout will pretty much stay the same. Well, the result of the technical meeting was the generation of a quote-unquote conventional plan that would show a conventional design based on a conventional bulk table
Right.
requirement.
Right,
So that, and we're actually, we did that preliminarily. We're just waiting for a little bit of information to finalize a few of the things which now we have, and we're ready to go. So if need be, we can submit without question for the next meeting and be prepared to show the board and the consultants that this project does comply on both levels.
What are the dates to make sure this works? When is the work session?
March 14th
And
and
when's the
then
regular meeting?
March 19th. That's not enough time for me to get it, because you have to do the
Well-
mailing 10 days in advance,
well,
and you have to do the
Then the board has to
publication
decide whether
7 days in
we're
advance.
sure that we're going to have everything satisfied, because if we publish that notice, we'll have to open the hearing.
And cutoff is next Thursday.
What's the date? What's the
Submittal
date?
date is the 28th.
2/28?
Yes, workshop is the 14th, and regular meeting is the 19th.
and how far in advance do we have to publish notice?
It has to be in the paper 7 days before, and I have to get it to them 7 days before that.
Okay. While we're figuring out dates, board members, do you have any comments on this?
No, I'm just going to second Mark's suggestion that you use the surveyor's plan as a base plan, but
Without question, rest assured.
I guess I understand how the proposed relocated lot line is going to help you as far as for the conventional, the overall area. But when we were first looking at this in the first conventional design, wasn't there still an issue with setbacks beyond that? And because of this border along the stone wall here between that lot and Sikoriak, isn't that still the same limitation that you had before? I guess
So
I'm
you're-
trying to envision where you'd put a house on that lot, even redrawn, that's gonna solve the.
So we would have,
Right there.
Okay.
See, what,
well, that's the cluster plan. What, are you referring to the cluster plan
No,
or the,
I'm trying to envision
convention?
where it would be in the conventional.
okay,
well, back up, right there. Can you scroll out?
right here?
Yes. Increase the limits of your screen so it
Okay.
includes the whole plan.
Come on. A little more?
One more, yeah. Thank you. Jeff, that layout right there
Mhm.
is, for the most part, will be the conventional design. See the two footprints of the houses on the lower level?
Sure.
The footprint up there. For the most part, the only difference you'll see in our next submission is the proposed relocated lot line.
Mm-hmm.
But those footprints, those setbacks, all comply with the
They already worked.
correct.
Okay. Yeah, that's just the part I couldn't remember where that.
You're saying that the only one that didn't was lot area, and your
It's the
conventional plan
pre-existing
now remedies
non-conform-
that.
Yeah, the pre-existing non-conforming did not comply because of lot area.
Right.
As you said, we remedied that.
We're not proposing any tree removal. Most of this is brush at this point?
Correct.
Okay.
And also just to reiterate, the owner's attorney is working on the maintenance agreement for the board and for the attorney to review.
That would be for the road.
Oh,
For
the
the
road
road
maintenance?
and also for the conservation.
Easement as well. yeah.
Right.
I think
The amount of
Brian will
easement.
want to see that as well.
Yeah, we'll want an easement, deed restriction, something to ensure
Yep.
it's in perpetuity.
And I think the public would be interested to know what the terms of it were, at least in an outline fashion.
That's a good point. So why don't we work towards the submission of 228? Try to get a more complete submission by then. And there's no way of having a public hearing.
I'd have to have it to the newspaper by March 6th, to be published by the 13th, in order to have the hearing on the 19th.
What was it, March 6th?
I have to have it to the newspaper by March 6th.
Is,
Pub- Publish on the
I mean, if we
13th.
have it submitted, would the board be agreeable to a preliminary nod from the municipal attorney, municipal
Well, I think
engineer?
you could schedule the hearing conditioned upon, say, Mark seeing that conventional plan and not certifying, but informing you
Right.
that it meets all of the bulk table requirements we discussed, that it's an acceptable conventional plan from a compliance point of view.
and if it's not, then we won't hold a public hearing.
We'll send a notice.
I think the other thing, but I do want to get back to so we've been talking about the conventional, because that establishes the yield, but also as far as the cluster layout, and this is just a question, that driveway that's proposed, can that be dropped down a little closer to the conservation easement? I don't know what the topo is, because we're not seeing the topo. And the reason is, in creating these lots in the driveway as it is, these homes are really not going to have much of a front yard or a rear yard or side yards. They're going to be very, as far as clustered lots are, while we can prove yield, the result here, I think, is not giving them a lot of usable land. It's because it's eaten up by this driveway.
Well, it's not a driveway, it's a private road.
Yeah,
I mean, I wish it was a.
I wish I was too.
Sheet SP5 has the contours on it if you want to see.
SP5?
Yes. And the contours are severe. I mean, they definitely slope steeply. So moving the private road down the page would increase the fill on the lower part of the road quite a bit.
So, Mark, we can't do something where, let's say it's a private road up to proposed lot 1, and then go with some kind of driveway, a single driveway to lot, the proposed.
All three have use of the road, and for the requirement to have the turnaround at the end creates the entire road as a private road.
Yeah, it's really the same thing with this first lot as well. Putting the private road in is really not creating much of a usable lot. And we have to think about the neighbors, that are next to these.
Do they still have a yard outside? There's the house and then the road below the private road where it says conservation.
Right,
So
so
that's still a yard.
It's yard, it's open space, they're gonna be limited as to what they can do within it. They could do agriculture, they could do maybe some landscaping. It's really supposed to be open space.
It's
It
pitched.
slopes quite a bit.
Yeah.
But it will be, it does remain open space.
Yeah.
And if you look at the pre-existing non-conforming lot, we're actually increasing its benefit by giving it, by rededicating that line and increasing the lot area in design anyway. So, and lot number 1 and lot number 2 benefit greatly. The easements in front of them are non-developable. They'll have a constant view of the lake, cannot be developed.
So you're required to show a cluster, you're required to submit a cluster. But I'm going to look up the regulations here quickly and ask the board, because I think with certain minor subdivisions, or if they were under a certain amount of acreage, you could waive the cluster and ultimately pursue
I believe that's how it reads, yeah.
a conventional. And I don't know if you have any thoughts as far as what you think would be a better layout.
Well, look,
And
I mean, other
maybe we
than
could still
sense of
protect the
fact-
slope, but
I'd like to hear your thoughts. I mean, my initial comment is it sets us back 6 months. Because if we revert back to a conventional design, I believe the only access we would have for the 2 lots would be off of Lakes Road.
right.
And that would be prohibitive.
So it's
It'd be worse for everybody.
well, I think that's the question as far as the driveways. It's very, very difficult.
Difficult driveways, going out onto a road with much higher speed, so there's some safety issues. They really haven't been analyzed, but first thought was
Yeah, you
that it
don't
was a better subdivision to come in off of Walton.
think
And
so.
also the utilities. It would be very difficult to access the sewer from the houses located closer to Lakes Road.
So the waiver of cluster involves, they can waive, but we're not obligated to waive a cluster plan subdivision for subdivisions involving 5 acres or less. Are you under 5?
Yes.
You are, right?
Yes.
Yeah, that's the preferred.
Yeah, I think the reality of it is, this is a case where the waiver is available, but you really want to.
Cluster. Well, or maybe something that's, what I'm not liking about the cluster is the effect of the small lots and where that road is, and the kind of housing, and yards that are created as a result. So is there sort of a better layout for a cluster than this? This is pretty tight.
But it also might be a case of lesser of two evils. I happen to sit on the first technical review that David was at, and when we were comparing the possibilities of this, if you could pull off the road and the turnaround, the advantages of not having entrances on Lakes Road, of having the conservation easement, of what it's going to bring to those 2 properties as far as, yes, they don't have a lot of grassland right surrounding the house, but they are on very large lots, and they're going to have beautiful views down to the lake, which are protected, which is nice in this case. From what it's going to look like to the neighbors, what it's going to look like when you're driving down Lakes Road and you see these properties in effect, yes, it's not great where the road is, but there's almost no other way to do it. You really see where the contour. I kept looking at this as you're making that comment, and
Right.
just how much further you can push that road from where it is. And unfortunately, Dave's right. Like, that's the point where it really everything starts to get real close. It levels out a little in the middle towards the bottom, and then gets steeper again towards the lake. But these are 2-foot contour
Contours.
intervals, and from 750 to 740, it's a pretty fairly steep run for putting a road on.
Given that there's only
It's real nice. It's real nice to have your kids running around on. That's one thing.
Given that there's only 3 houses, is there any flexibility on the highway superintendent's part to let it be a narrower roadway? I don't know if that solves much, but,
That's
No,
what,
that
is the
was-
26 is this that, getting
It's a
back,
state requirement.
oh, okay.
So-
is there case law on this? Is there definite, because, and I only say that because I know of so many communities that are doing shared driveways that are not 26 feet,
I can't
for better, for worse.
I can't explain why people don't want to comply with the law as it currently exists. But multiple fire inspectors have pointed out to me the specific section of
Okay.
the state code that requires the 26 of finished road, not including shoulders. That's one of the changes that the code made.
But driveways may be different.
Driveways for single residential use are not an access roadway.
But, so I guess, so let's say you have a shared driveway.
No such thing in the town of Monroe. The town code,
But can we have shared driveways? I mean, that wouldn't have to be
Legislative
26
process.
feet? I guess that's a
not the way
question.
the code is written.
Not as written, but
We'd have to.
it's just
amend it.
because we don't have a spec for a shared driveway.
Basically, the code says that once more than one property uses the access, it's a private road.
Right, and then the private
It
road
has to be.
standard is where you're getting the 26 feet.
Right.
Okay.
And there's a reason for that, is to create proper accesses for emergency vehicles. I'm sure that the highway superintendent doesn't want to grant a waiver that would compromise the good intent of the law,
Yeah. So for,
especially since he's the fire chief.
right.
And honestly, Bonnie, if I may, I live on a dead-end street. So, I mean, realistically, once you get past the driveway for, I guess what'll be proposed Lot 1 in the conservation plan, the only traffic that's going to go on that part of the road past the angle is the cars in and out of the third house. Effectively,
It's a
they're
stick-
going to treat it like a driveway.
It's a stickball court.
You know, I live on, there's 14 houses on my street, and we all effectively treat it like a common driveway, and people are, you get cognizant of that stuff, and it's part of your experience. On a dead end, people start kind of look out for each other on a lot of levels, and so if it's a matter of having, room for people to run around or freedom of access between the grass right in front of the house and on the far side of the road, there's not going to be a lot of vehicular traffic obstacles to that. And, you'd like to think people at least be considerate of that, more or less. And by necessity, they probably will be.
And you could put a private road sign,
Yeah, just
because it is a private road.
the house, a couple things. The house on the smaller lot is oriented so the driveway's in the front, whereas most of the dwellings are facing Walton. I'm anticipating if neighbors come in, what some of the concerns may be. So if you have Walton Terrace, everybody's facing to Walton Terrace. This one's got the driveway and it's facing sideways. So it's not really oriented to the street because it's oriented to the private drive. So I think, perhaps some of that could be mitigated by some plantings in here to give them some privacy. And this, I think this cluster plan, once we develop the yield, maybe the layout will evolve a little bit. Another question, so Mark, for these two dwellings, is there a way then for, let's say, this driveway and this driveway to be flipped to this side? So let's say it's flipped to this side and you have driveway to driveway. Again, can you then, if the driveways end, let's say here, can you cut back on this road? Can you cut back on this T at all,
The size of the T or where the T is?
where the T is?
Yeah, if the T has to be at the end of the shared portion.
Okay,
And I don't know that
so this isn't shared here.
well, the T is shared all the way to the end at this point because that's part of the code required turnaround.
So we need a T for the turnaround.
Offset T is really what they're doing here. It's not a true T, but
Okay, so we need some kind of T.
Beyond the last driveway.
It has to be beyond the last driveway?
or concurrent with the driveway, which is what they have here. Really, where the side entrance to the second proposed lot number 2, that wide area to the left of the house is actually part of the turnaround.
You're saying in here?
Yes.
You're saying so a fire truck could do a 3-point turn
Or a
right there at the
UPS
end,
truck or any
what?
other larger vehicle, ambulance.
Okay, because it would be hard for them to back up. The thing's already long enough to have a fire truck reverse all the way out that road back to Walton Terrace might be challenging, I guess, already. Code aside, just for
Yeah.
even practically, I think it'd be
Yes,
hard.
it would be.
So what slopes are we talking about within here, this area?
For the road,
Yeah, or for just in general, the slopes. I see here 752. This is the
Between
750.
the road and the conservation easement area?
Yeah, from here to here. You said it's 1 to 30, right?
Yes.
So let's see. If I go from the 750 Is that right? Yep, 750, and this is what, 50, 48, this should be 46, right?
Yes.
So we're covering 24 feet, 2 feet, over 24 feet. So that's what, about a 10 point something slope?
Yeah,
That's not where it gets, that's not where it's still relatively flat there.
it starts to get steep around 746 contour.
Okay, so I went to 746. So beyond 746, when we get in the conservation, that's where the
Right.
topo lanes. So, Mark, can this be, if this is still flat in here, can this be brought and swung down a little bit just to come in here?
Well, yes and no, but then you're creating another problem. Now you have the owner's vehicles, visiting vehicles, emergency vehicles, right up against a steep slope, which is not the safest thing in the winter. You usually like to have a bit of a plateau off the paved surface. So again, I think part of the benefit in having that space between contour 746 and 750 being fairly
The 25 feet?
minor slope is that it's really a safety issue because it's almost a shoulder for
So-
snow plow, for anything else that's coming in there. You don't want to have the edge of the road at the break point to a steep slope. It's not a good situation.
They could end
I
up
think
on
the
lakes.
layout that they're showing is probably the only one that works.
Is there any kind of retaining wall? This is just the limits of disturbance you're showing.
Limits of disturbance.
I mean, in theory, they could put some kind of wooden guardrail if it was that big of a concern. Mark, the only reason I'm talking about it at all is to try and get the road farther a little bit down the slope to give them more front yard or backyard. Because right now, your backyard is what? Oops. You know, we have a backyard that's about, I mean, this is a tight little project here. 18 feet.
Yeah.
You know, that's less than a car space, or it's about a car space. That's all for a backyard.
Oh, it's really a passive front yard. You're going to basically be looking out at a reserved area with a great view of the lake, but there's not a lot of room if you come here and expect to play ball or do anything else out in your front yard. You'll be driving to the park. It's just,
Or you'll play ball on the private road.
or you'll.
Which we did
Some
when
of us
when we
did,
were
yeah.
kids, yeah.
Yeah, it's,
And the basketball court will be at the end.
Yeah.
yeah.
And the ball's gonna roll all the way
And
down.
oh,
Don't want that to
That's why you need the
happen.
bushes at the bottom.
Or that wooden guardrail
that wooden guardrail.
for
further
the
down
basketball collection.
So you can't think of any other alternatives to shorten up the road, or
No, it's,
just lay the two houses a little differently so that we're shortening the road and giving them more yard space?
it would have a minor effect. And I don't know, we don't have all the slope information on the plan yet. The profile doesn't have the grade slopes. But if we push the road further down the hill, I wonder what it would do to the slope of the road. If you start making it less
Yeah.
passable during winter months. So it's a tough site is really what it comes down to.
Any other comments?
And if it matters, I was curious how close the neighbor's house was after the 18 feet backyard.
Yeah, I was looking at that. I mean, this really isn't a great cluster from the perspective of what's being created. And again, it's the road that's really a limiting factor. Because we still want to create nice lots for, future residents. So this is the back of that.
At least the
Um,
house isn't right up against that.
Yeah, he's got
Property
some,
line there,
he's
you
got
know?
some yard here.
Yeah.
These guys, looks like they have a pool and they're fronting off of this cul-de-sac.
But it's not like they're looking out their window
Yeah.
and then seeing the other house from
Right,
there. That
I
would've
think
been
it's
worse.
mostly these, homeowners.
Yeah.
That are going to be close to it. And otherwise, this guy isn't too close. He's got his pool there.
Yeah.
And then he's also up high because he's coming off of the cul-de-sac. So, and you could see how he's even terraced his yard because of the
Just stop
the
the ball.
slope.
Yeah.
Stop the ball from rolling.
All right, well, I think you'll need to submit the conventional with the correct bulk requirements, et cetera, so the planning board can establish the yield, and we'll see if we can go to public hearing, and maybe just look a little more at the plan and,
Or if,
After the date
could we
of the public
revisit that point? If, we submit on the 28th, everything, and
Not before
Mark
March
gives an
6th,
initial
Because that's when, well, I guess we're going to publish
satisfaction,
it.
could we still go ahead then with the public hearing? So at least we can
The
meet
8th.
the time constraint.
Yeah,
That was the point that we initially started
March
with.
8th.
I think we could,
Noreen has to
I
publish
think
on the
we could
6th.
start with a public hearing. Because we have to do a secret negative declaration, we're basically going into this based on this layout.
Right.
If there are any changes, I guess we'll address it either through amended negative declarations or whatever
I don't think
happens.
that the environmental impacts are likely to vary much if you tweak the cluster.
Right. So it shouldn't be an issue. We just may have to amend it. I just want to get back to this whole concept of a shared driveway. So if the town, no, I know it's not in the town code right now, Mark, but do you have some communities that, let's say, allow a shared driveway for 2 homes?
No.
None?
Town of Newburgh allows up to 3.
On a shared driveway?
I think they do. Is it 2?
No, I think they.
The town board can
for a
give you
cur-
approval.
For a curb cut, they allow the 2, but for the actual access way, I think town of Newburgh adopted the same private
think-
road regulation.
No, I think the town board, it has to be a town board approval. You can have a shared driveway for 2, but you can have up to 3 with town board approval. That's my memory of it.
And then it's not necessarily 26 feet, or is it 26 feet?
I can't tell you whether we've approved any of those since that new code provision came in. It's only a couple of years old, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
All
And I
right.
don't know how it reads. I'd defer to the building and the fire people that understand it. But
Right.
is that a driveway, or, because driveways don't have to be
The
26.
driveways don't have to be.
It has to be the
But when does-
access way. When you share it, when do you cross?
When does this, when does a shared driveway really become a private road? And I think that's a question. That's both a policy question, but in your experience, Mark, it sounds like once you have 2 dwellings off of a driveway, that in essence is a private road.
Again, the way that the town of Monroe's code was written is to stop having shared access ways where they have the substandard access.
Mm-hmm.
That's the way the code was adopted when the private road spec was included in the town road spec that was updated 4 years ago, 4 or 5 years ago.
And I think we had some years ago where the driveways met at the roadway, but then with split
Yes.
right away. So
Right.
you have fewer conflicting movements because they share the driveway, but they wouldn't share it all the way down to the houses. That might satisfy that 26-foot rule.
I also want to definitely know what the maximum size of the dwellings are going to be.
That's fine.
I want to, just because of the fact that we have to establish some kind of yards for these lots. So we need to know what the maximum dwelling's going to be, only because of the yards, again.
The footprint of the house.
Yeah, I'd like really,
Actually, we have all that.
okay,
We are poised to complete it. Again, there was just some information
okay,
floating around that needed to be collected.
Okay.
It's all collected. We're poised to complete this.
Okay.
Without question.
Okay.
We will make that deadline date, the 28th.
The 2 plans from the surveyor, the conventional yield plan and the cluster plan, you're gonna have to roll them into your set. This is a freestanding plan, doesn't resemble the set, isn't numbered with the set. It's gotta be part of the submittal, so as you're reworking of the package, just the 2 plans from the surveyor, make sure they're rolled in, matching the application package.
Well, of course. I thought we were all in agreement that due to the time factors that we would be allowed to just submit this to make the meeting. That was our goal. So,
Understood for this one.
Yeah,
I'm just
so-
saying when you're packaging this up.
Without question,
All right.
of course. There's no issue. Of course we would do that.
Okay.
All right, so
Thoughts as far as the design, but I'm going to hold them for now.
we'll submit on February 28th.
I
Okay.
do have to say, I need it no later than 3:30 that day,
Okay.
because I need to get stuff done in order to get it to Mark, and I am not in the office on Friday.
Okay, so we will submit, board members, we will submit on the 28th. At that point, we would just be looking for a preliminary nod of approval that we at least satisfy those requirements from Mark. If he gives that nod to the board, we're just requesting to allow us then to go ahead with the public hearing.
Right, so it wouldn't be approval, but it's just an agreement that we could get 3 lots and then
That
go
it
from
meets-
there.
Yeah, it meets all of
It
the
meets
required bulk
everything we
table.
spoke about
Right,
today.
right.
And then we would just ask for the public hearing notice so we can get that out in time. And have the public hearing in March. And then whatever other minor revisions need to be done, we can conclude that and finalize this.
Okay.
Send the plans to me in PDF as well, so I can get them out to the planning board, so they'll have a chance to look at it, please.
And then I can load it up.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Just so I have the dates down, Noreen, what is the day that you, cutoff date where you have to know if the plans are in acceptable
I have
form?
to get it to the newspaper by 3:30 on the 6th.
March 6th.
March 6th, to publish it on the 13th in order to have the hearing on the 19th. Because they want it a week before I publish.
And when's our next,
Workshop is the 14th and regular is the 19th.
okay. Okay. Everybody good with the dates? I think that's it for this evening.
We'll have a PDF, JPEG, whatever you want. We have the technology, we can get that done.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you very much for your help and cooperation. We appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks, Dave.
At this point, I don't believe anyone is here representing Mikvah
Unless he emailed
Yisrael.
after I left.
Uh,
He called me and he asked me for a copy of Mark's comments. I
Okay,
sent him the copy of Mark's comments, and I
Okay.
said I was leaving the office.
okay.
And he wasn't gonna make it, but he was sending
Excuse me.
Jacob? I don't remember, I think that was his name.
Ferenz?
He's an older gentleman, I
Jake-
can't.
Oh,
Jake
Jake
Ferenz?
Ferenz.
Yes, and one other representative is who he said was gonna come tonight. And that I said they were first on the agenda for 7 o'clock,
Okay.
and he said fine.
Since they're not here, Mike, should we just table this?
Well,
What should we
I
do?
don't- I don't think you can have any meaningful discussion, but I think you probably want a quick report. I think Mark has more comments than I do, but I will tell you that Isaac Walter sent to me a shared border and borderline easement agreement that was not satisfactory, and I sent an email back to him with my comments. He has not gotten back to me since then.
Okay.
I did prepare the 2 resolutions. We're not going to act on them in the form they are in, but they were hot to trot last month, so I thought you wanted me to get the resolution
Yeah,
ready
just,
for action if we
right,
could.
starting drafting.
But I think Mark has some reservations about the adequacy of the water supply to serve this. So I'll
Okay.
leave it to Mark.
Yeah, it's good that you sent them the comments because they can work on addressing our concerns. The long and short of it is, we really need to hear from the County Department of Health as to their findings and whether or not the system that's proposed is acceptable. The second item, they need to have the town board grant or agree to a license agreement that now not only has the sewer force main crossing the town road, but also the water line. We need to see easements, which will be hand in hand with the documents Mike is reviewing. There's a concern about adequate capacity. We've been told all along that the Glenwood School well system was adequate to serve both the schools. Now it's being represented to us that it not only can service the 2 schools, but also the mikveh site as well. There is a problematic note on the plans indicating that if it isn't able to provide service to the mikveh, that there are solenoid valves that will shut off the mikveh while it's serving the school. So and I pointed that out in the comments, so they really need to resolve the issue of adequate capacity. They also have some other things, such as a note which indicates that the supply line from Glenwood is being connected to the well discharge, and I'm presuming it's the well that we were told has less than acceptable quality water. I have issues with cross-connection control per the state code to have a water supply from a school tied into a well that they've deemed unusable for water supply. So there's a lot of open issues. We have issues of the water system at the Glenwood School is being treated and it's got chlorination, but the raw water is being sent over to the mikveh. But they don't tell us where they're chlorinating, if they're chlorinating, how they're treating it, if they're filtering it. But again, I don't know what they submitted to the health department. So there's probably more open issues than there are answers to this point.
Right.
So they've got all my comments, because Noreen said she passed them on. They have work to do. Again, this is a change that they made without knowledge of the town, and they just need to resolve it now.
One of the questions I have with regard to the resolutions is we now have 180-day limits on the conditions for a site plan. That they have to meet it and they can get an extension of another 180 days. Is this considered an amendment of the original site plan approval? I don't know what the restrictions were back then, but are we in essence, by approving this as a second amendment, are we now tolling in accordance with the 6 months, whatever the code
No, I would
says?
think it starts anew. They'd have to,
So as of the approval of this, then
It's a new
they're getting the
application.
6 months?
yeah.
Okay.
That's how I believe you want to read it.
So all of these conditions are those that were within the original?
No, there's more. There's a catch-all that says all the other applicable provisions are carried over. But
Okay.
there were some that were important enough that I thought they should be repeated.
Okay.
But if you'd like, I can get you a copy of the old resolutions so you have them.
Yeah, I think the board should probably take a look at the resolutions for the two, for Glenwood School and for the
Yep.
mikveh, just to see what they all are. And then, in general, has Glenwood met all the conditions, Mark? Is it close to, what's the status right now of the Glenwood School?
Well, Glenwood
1 is open.
1 is open.
Okay.
Glenwood 2 is an open application. It's the mikveh that really is the one that is seeking their C of O. And the C of O was restricted by the code enforcement officer because they had not complied with all the conditions, one being to establish the water system in accordance with the approval. They did something different.
So this Glenwood, is this particular approval for both Glenwoods or
No,
Glenwood
that's
1?
Glenwood 1. I don't think Glenwood 2 is involved in this.
Okay, so this
It
is
was one of my
Glenwood.
questions in my cover email. I don't know where the water line is or where the well is. If it also crosses the property of Glenwood 2, then Glenwood 2's resolution would need to be amended as well.
So is this Glenwood 2?
No, that's the mikveh
Sorry, mikvah. This is Glenwood.
1, and keep going further would be Glenwood 2. Yeah, in that area down there
Everybody's getting
somewhere,
dizzy.
right?
Yeah.
Glenwood 2's down here. You're saying Glenwood 2?
Yes, that's
Okay.
my memory, yeah.
So this is Glenwood 1.
And where's the well?
The Glenwood 1, the well is in near the back of the site, which is close to where Glenwood 2 school is
Okay,
going.
but it's on Glenwood 1's property?
I think it's all one.
Oh,
It's all
okay,
one
that's
property, I
right.
believe.
I could,
Glenwood School.
So this,
let's see.
They're just building
Yeah,
a
it
second
is.
school.
I remember the other well was near the mikvah, and he said it got contaminated with runoff of salt on the roots. Whatever, that was the story, but
Right.
I'm just remembering it
And
now.
The Glenwood well is actually further in on the site than the proposed second school. They're relocating the water line from the well to get around the new school, if I recall that site plan correctly.
So, so it would be all on one property, the two schools, and then the mikvah, I think, is on this site. So they took down a couple houses and then put this up then, okay. And so the line, is that, Mike, you mentioned that it's a little unclear whether it's crossing,
Well, it's the same property, but if it meant that the Glenwood 2 site plan has to be amended to show a relocation of that water line, then there should be an amendment to Glenwood 2 as well.
I think 2 shows the water line relocation as a result of the second school.
okay,
already. They're
Okay.
actually coming out of, and I'm going from memory now, I don't have the plan in front of me, but I believe they're coming out of the Glenwood 1, the existing school treatment room with the supply line to the mikveh.
okay. So the Glenwood School, we're amending the site plan approval, but in essence, this is for number 1.
Yeah.
And it's already in place and it's already operating.
Built and
Yes.
operated.
So does this have a more limited set of conditions that are specifically for the water since it met all the other
Well, I
conditions?
think I marked the ones that I said are new language in the margin comments
Yep,
that are really, 5 is the need for the easement or license to be approved by the town attorney. That was a condition before. They needed it for the sanitary sewer force main. Now they will also need that because they cross town-owned lands for the water service line. Then 6 is the approval of the health department.
do you think it's worthwhile making reference in these to the section of the code that talks about the 180 days?
Yeah, in the general conditions at the end, sure.
Yeah.
So, yeah, good idea.
And they can't have an extension, but giving them notice that that timeframe exists. And then, Mark, I want to bring to your attention, with regard to the signing of the plans, the section on site plans talks about the town engineer actually putting a signature on the plan as well, rather than. So, I want your opinion on that.
I don't think it's proper.
Okay.
I mean, I don't know that anyone other than the design professional who's preparing the plan should be signing the plan.
It's in the same way as the chairwoman has to sign the plan, signing off on it. It's more that kind of a,
Yeah, I think the town stamp, whoever, be it the secretary for the board, chairperson for the board, stamping it isn't the same as a licensed professional signing.
okay,
Yeah, usually send a memo at the time,
Usually I'll send a memo and just say that I've reviewed the 6
and then,
requirements and
okay,
and then you can sign.
okay.
one,
Yeah, and I want to, because I think there's reference to designee, and based on past history, I don't think the town right now wants designees as much as,
I stamp a plain stamp, it's your signature.
yeah.
Has no signature whatsoever on it.
I usually just include that.
Yeah.
You say the deputy chair or something. so that
Exactly.
If you're on vacation,
Right,
an applicant isn't held up unnecessarily.
right.
not to bring back an open subject that has been problematic in the past, but the other representation we had made to us was that we would have this school master plan presented at the next appearance, which would be tonight.
Right.
So, again, it's a tool that the board has been asking for multiple years to understand where this is all going.
Right.
So I would suggest that you not lose sight of that.
So was the school master plan an actual condition of any of the approvals, or was it just something that was requested by the then planning
I think
board?
For the Larkin School, whether it's a condition of the resolution or a precondition of any further extension of it, they were clearly informed that they're not getting any more extensions unless there's a master plan that satisfies you.
Okay, so that's for the Larkin School.
That's a temporary approval.
Okay, and then for this series of schools over here, Glenwood and
It was
Mikva,
promised, and I'm not quite sure that it was included in resolutions, but it was promised for the discussions on the Larkin Boys School, promised for the second-story school at the mikveh, promised for Glenwood 2.
Yeah.
So every school application that has come before the board, that promise has been made. And
But where
So-
there's some degree of leverage is, they were clearly told that there would be no further extensions of the boys' school temporary approval.
Okay.
Unless there was a plan in place that showed why it's temporary and not just becoming permanent by virtue of repeated extensions.
right, so can we build into then these approvals, language that says any next submission requires a school master plan? Are we segmenting these reviews by, are we getting into segmentation? Is there a way to say, look, we really need a school master plan?
Well, where it made sense and related directly to the approval, when they wanted the temporary school, it was because the pressure and the need to address something with immediacy.
Right.
Of course, it's going on for years. I suppose
I don't know
you
if
could
it makes
artfully
sense
tell
for
them
this
when they
versus
came
other.
back in
Yeah.
that we need to know what your long-range plan is. We can't continue to have piecemeal approvals, but can you refuse to entertain their application because they haven't given it to you? I don't think so. I think you can refuse to extend the boys' school temporary permit any further because
Okay.
it's not justified.
Okay.
They won't tell us what their plan is to solve the problem.
Okay. But as far as the
But
Glenwoods
I-
are concerned,
Yeah, well, Glenwood 1 is already open. Glenwood 2,
Right.
I think, is approved. Or maybe, no,
I
maybe
don't
it
think
wasn't.
I don't think it has final approval yet.
I'll
But
have to see. I
can
thought I
check,
had a
but-
resolution. Maybe it's just a draft resolution. I
okay.
think certainly, in terms of bus routing and everything else, you needed to know where are they going in the long run. Obviously, they have an increasing population and an increasing need for more school buildings.
And it wasn't just the schools, it was bus parking.
Sure.
There was issues to temporary locations for bus parking, permanent locations for bus parking. And again, we went in discussions with Sherry Torah, it was indicated, we don't need hard and fast dates. We just need to have a better understanding of the goals and the sequencing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, what's your anticipated need for classrooms over the next 10 years? What are the available options in terms of land that you could purchase and build? And when do those schools got to open to meet that demand?
Frankly, I think it'd be beneficial to have a narrative just because as newer board members, we weren't involved in the previous approval, so we don't know even what the proposed plan is between the two Glenwood schools and the relationship with the temporary. There should be some narrative that helps us with that, how these pieces fit together.
Part of the problem was we did get some narratives for each site independently, and they all didn't match.
Mm.
So we said, why don't you have and again, the discussions were very positive in nature when we did sit down with them. Audrey and myself sat down and went over what would be helpful
Mm-hmm.
in a master plan. And they were in agreement,
Mm-hmm.
because it would help them as well. I just think they need to focus on it.
Anything written after that meeting?
They had some notes.
Okay.
I don't think we've seen a
No.
formal submittal.
Okay.
Even when we were talking about the trailers, when we were at our meeting in the movie theater, which is not that long ago, when Isaac was put to with some very general questions about the direction of what their anticipated growth, couldn't answer it at all. I mean, there isn't planning there. There isn't projection there.
I think Jake Ferenz is the guy that would know more about where they're going with that. And Isaac is kind of works on each project, is my read of how their division of responsibility
And the meeting
goes.
was with Jake.
It was with Jake, okay.
Yeah, I remember them being a little, making it sound a little desperate that they had, girls in one school and then another school and in disjointed places and saying, look, if we don't have the trailers, it's even more of a mess. They either don't go to school at all or they're scattered amongst these little spots. So that's,
And my recollection is they were talking about financial difficulties of getting the finances to be able to build the schools, which
And
is
that
why
was the
they're in this.
reason why we had said, look, we're not looking for hard and fast deadlines, because we know there's financing involved, and there's, as far as the school population grows, that's not 100% predictable, but at least have a sequence, because if you know you have a problem and it's getting worse, put it on the list.
Right,
So it was a very positive discussion. We just need to go somewhere with it.
right.
I can't imagine that they are not doing some level of planning. It's just that they should include us in what it is.
Right. Any other comments?
Mark, I just had a question about, I had gone out and looked at the site, and it's just immediately clear that they're so limited on where they can run this water line between the buildings. But where Forest Street meets Y.D. Goldberg Drive, along the water line proposed runs right along the property line. Is there an issue with that at all? Can they run a water line between that road and that property line on such a narrow piece
Is this
of?
going in toward the school?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and up to around the bend. It gets a little bit wider when the road turns and heads in the direction of the school, but between Forest and the turn, that's a real narrow strip between there. I mean, I know that the property next door is Hamaspec of Orange County. I don't know if there's any affiliation one way or the other, but
We're looking, number one, at a very small water line. This is not a big project for them. I think it's only a couple-inch water main.
okay.
So it's it's a long service is really what it is. And a narrow bucket, you can fit it in rather easily. They could really go along the edge of the pavement and be successful. But keep in mind that I believe it's already in.
Oh,
So the planning side is in the rearview mirror, because the code enforcement officer and myself found out about this after their work was done. So we asked for as-bills, and so it's not really a design effort at this point.
But I get what you mean. You'd want to be away from your neighbor typically, so you could do
Well, you
repair
don't
work
wanna-
on it and give a few feet where you could work on it and not be on your
Yeah, if it
neighbor's.
was a real water main, 6, 8, 10-inch water main, I'd have more concern.
Okay.
But you're looking at really a small service line, so it'd be not much different than what you would have a service to a commercial building or a house, or, that'd be fractional size main, not 3/4, this probably a couple-inch main, but it's not difficult with that size main to fit it in.
But it also sounds like they're banking on never really using the well. By the time the second school gets built, they plan to be years into being tapped into KJ's water system when the new system opens up.
That was
Certainly
referenced.
We talked about that at the last meeting.
It's the sensible solution.
The school is, again, from what Isaac said, 4.5, 5 years out from being completed, and they're expecting within 2 years, 3 years max, that all of this is going to be tied in and not on well water.
That would be the best result.
Anything else? No. All right, with that, just want to give Mike the opportunity to
Yeah.
share some news.
Sure. I mentioned to Bonnie at the last work session that I'm going to retire from the practice of law at the end of May. My partners are not able to continue to serve your board because they have too many nights in other communities. They may be able to cover some of mine, but the nights here are just too conflicting. So I will work with you and whoever you choose as your successor in terms of meeting with them with the files, turning the files over. The sooner you could do that, the better. We could have some overlap. That would be helpful. But the end of May.
Well,
I've been here-
congratulations.
Can we vote on that?
I think 30 years.
We
How many years?
can vote that down.
Sorry, how many
You can't
years is
retire.
I've been practicing over 40 years, and I go out, like Mark, 3.5 nights per week.
Yeah.
I have 5 grandchildren. They live in various parts of the country. To get loose to go see them is very difficult because there isn't a week that, every now and then you have a 5th week in a month. We had one
Yeah.
a month ago. It's like
Special.
cause for celebration. You actually have a life for a change. So although I like the work, I always have, but it's a good time for me to do it. It makes sense.
Well, we
So-
certainly thank you for your service to the town.
I've been here a long time. I'm glad I did it. I like working with you. It's a good board.
Thank you.
All right, well, congratulations.
And just to let the board know, there will be a RFP that's going to go out for a planning board attorney. So I believe the town attorney may be drafting that. We'll take a look at the initial set of responses that come in and then talk about options as far as who
You
we
may
may
have
want to
An
represent
RFP
us.
in your files of relatively recent
Okay.
vintage, because there was a time when you put out a request for proposals for a planning board attorney. You ended up hiring me again anyway, but you had it probably 3 to 5 years ago.
Okay. Yeah, that was before my time, so we'll take a, I know of
You might
another
find
one.
a file.
Yeah, maybe I'll see if there's
Yeah, see if you
anything
find on the file.
RFP?
Yeah, I know of one that was done in some other municipalities.
Yeah, I
So we need to just get it out there. As you said, the sooner the better, so that there's some overlap between the
See if
attorneys.
there's anything on my sister.
Anything else, Mike or Mark? No? All right, with that, may I have
Wait,
a
hang
motion
on.
to adjourn?
Bonnie, questions?
Yes, sure, sure.
So we have an April 16th meeting. That's during the week of spring break for the Monroe School District.
Okay,
I will be planning a vacation that week.
okay,
Just throwing that out on the radar.
okay.
Everyone knows I will not be here.
Thank
More
you.
than likely. I don't know if that influences anyone else's decisions. Spring break, go wild. Yeah, that's it. Now I'll make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
I'll second that motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. I'll actually be in Key West in March, so I gotta make sure I'm not
Well, that's
missing
an
one
awesome
of
place
them.
to go.
Speaking of